My life changed the day I learned the truth about my wife, Nancy. At first, our marriage seemed perfect. 5 years filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. I never doubted her devotion. But looking back, I now see how blind trust and ignorance can disguise the signs of betrayal. It wasn't naivety on my part. I had faith in the people closest to me, people I thought would always have my back. That faith, however, was shattered. It began with a phone call. I had just moved into a new house, adjusting furniture and unpacking, when Nancy called to say she couldn't access the garage. Her keys no longer worked, and the garage door opener wasn't responding. Calmly, I informed her she no longer lived there, which she denied. As our argument escalated, I dropped the news she didn't want to hear. She had been served divorce papers. Her betrayal was no longer a secret, and I wasn't willing to tolerate it. Nancy's denial rang hollow. For weeks, I had been piecing together the truth, starting with a revelation from my best friend, Adam. He had always been my closest confidant, a constant presence in my life since 7th grade. When he revealed that Nancy had been unfaithful even before our marriage, I was blindsided. How could I have missed it? How could someone I trusted betray me so deeply? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about confronting hard truths, facing the people you once trusted, and finding the courage to start over. The decision to end my marriage wasn't made lightly, but sometimes the only way to move forward is to close the door on the past. Learning about Nancy's infidelity didn't happen all at once. It started with Adam, who sat me down at our usual spot, Marlowe's Tavern. Over a few beers, he revealed a truth I wasn't prepared to hear. Nancy had been cheating on me since before our wedding. Adam explained how he'd suspected it for years but assumed I knew. He believed I had quietly accepted her actions, just as he had with his own wife's unconventional behavior. Adam's perspective was shaped by his own marriage. He and his wife, Emily, were swingers, openly engaging in relationships outside their marriage with mutual consent. To Adam, relationships could operate on different rules as long as both partners agreed. He assumed Nancy and I had a similar arrangement. His assumptions made him keep quiet, thinking I was complicit. But I wasn't. What hurt most was realizing how long this had gone on. Nancy's so-called card nights with her sorority sisters and book club meetings were nothing but alibis. She even used my business trips to disguise her affairs, hosting lovers in our home. When Adam detailed the patterns of her deception, the weight of it all hit me. The timeline stretched back 6 years, long before we exchanged vows. Determined to verify Adam's claims, I installed a hidden camera in our bedroom. It was a painful decision, but I needed proof. On my next business trip, the camera recorded everything. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. Nancy wasn't just unfaithful, she was shamelessly bringing her lovers into our shared space. The footage devastated me, but it also gave me clarity. My trust in Nancy was broken beyond repair. Still, I wasn't ready to confront her immediately. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps. I met with a divorce lawyer to understand my options and began preparing for the inevitable fallout. Meanwhile, Nancy carried on as if everything was fine. She greeted me with smiles, kissed me goodbye, and asked about my day like nothing was wrong. Her normalcy made me question my sanity. How could she pretend so effortlessly? But the evidence didn't lie. I knew what had to be done. One morning, I told Nancy I'd be leaving for another business trip. It was a lie, of course, meant to give me the space to finalize my preparations. As soon as she left for her book club, I had the locks changed and the garage code reprogrammed. I moved her belongings out of the house and delivered the divorce papers. By the time she returned, she was no longer welcome. Nancy's reaction was predictable. She claimed she had done nothing wrong, insisting her actions weren't cheating. She argued that her relationship with her lover, Abigail, was separate from what we shared. Nancy revealed she was bisexual and that Abigail had been her partner since college. To her, it wasn't betrayal, it was fulfilling a part of herself I couldn't provide. Her reasoning infuriated me. She may have convinced herself she wasn't cheating, but her lies told a different story. For 6 years, she had deceived me, hiding her double life. Whether it was with a man or a woman, her actions broke the foundation of our marriage: trust. I asked Nancy if she could give up Abigail and focus on our marriage. Her response was clear: she couldn't. Abigail was as much a part of her life as I was, and she wasn't willing to let that go. That admission sealed the fate of our relationship. As painful as it was, I realized there was no saving our marriage. Nancy wanted both worlds, but I couldn't accept being part of a marriage that required me to share her. The final unraveling of my marriage felt like a storm crashing down on everything I thought I knew. After Nancy admitted she couldn't give up Abigail, I knew there was no point in dragging things out. But that didn't mean the end came quietly. Nancy's attempts to justify herself grew more desperate. She argued that her relationship with Abigail didn't diminish her love for me. She claimed she'd been careful to ensure I was never neglected, pointing to our frequent intimacy and her efforts to maintain the illusion of normalcy. To her, love and fidelity weren't the same thing. But I couldn't see it her way. Cheating was cheating, no matter how she framed it. I told her this, but she dismissed my feelings as narrow-minded, even accusing me of being homophobic for not understanding her needs. That only deepened the divide between us. The situation became even more volatile when my brother Mason and his wife, Abigail, were dragged into the mess. Abigail, of course, was Nancy's lover, but Mason's role in all of it turned my stomach. He had known about the affair from the beginning and chose to keep it from me. Worse, he covered for Nancy, giving her an alibi and a safe place to meet Abigail. His betrayal stung almost as much as Nancy's. When Mason confronted me at Marlowe's tavern, furious about the divorce papers and the fallout it caused, I couldn't hold back my rage. The punches I threw at him weren't just about his betrayal, they were about years of lies and deception. I knew I'd burned a bridge I could never rebuild, but in that moment, I didn't care. Back at the house, Nancy tried one last time to worm her way back into my life. She broke in through a window, demanding that I hear her out. I refused. I told her everything would go through the lawyers and that there was nothing left to discuss. Her persistence was maddening. She wanted me to believe she wasn't at fault, that her actions had been out of love for me and not betrayal. She even tried to rewrite the narrative, claiming her affair with Abigail didn't count as infidelity because there were no other men involved. But it wasn't just Abigail. There were others, men and women alike. The recordings, phone records, and eyewitness accounts left no doubt. Nancy's version of love wasn't something I could accept. When I finally told her to leave, she pushed back harder. She accused me of being the unreasonable one, of throwing away our marriage over something she saw as insignificant. That was the moment I realized how differently we viewed love, commitment, and trust. To her, those things were fluid. To me, they were absolute. Nancy eventually moved in with Mason and Abigail, occupying their spare bedroom while we finalized the divorce. Even after everything, she continued to deny having any romantic involvement with Mason, claiming their arrangement was strictly about convenience. I didn't believe her. The divorce was messy, but the outcome was clear. Nancy and I were done. The love I once felt for her had turned into a hollow ache, a reminder of how much she destroyed. My relationship with Mason and Abigail was beyond repair. I cut them out of my life entirely, refusing to attend family gatherings where they were present. It wasn't just my marriage that ended, it was the life I thought I'd built. Every plan Nancy and I had made, every dream we shared, was now meaningless. But as painful as it was, I knew walking away was the only option. When the divorce was finalized, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. The marriage I had cherished was gone, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Nancy moved on quickly. She remarried, though I never found out if she told her new husband about her history. I couldn't bring myself to care. The fallout extended beyond her. My relationship with Mason was irreparably broken. His complicity in Nancy's betrayal was a line I couldn't forgive. Abigail tried to mend the rift, but I refused her efforts. Trust, once shattered, cannot be pieced back together, and I couldn't bring myself to pretend otherwise. For a while, I avoided family gatherings, unable to be in the same room as Mason and Abigail. Over time, I learned to coexist with them at events, but our interactions were cold and distant. I kept to myself, speaking only when necessary, never engaging beyond polite civility. Life eventually moved forward. I sold the house Nancy and I had once shared. It was too large and too full of memories to stay. I started fresh, in a smaller place that felt like my own. A few years later, I met April. She was different, open, honest, and fiercely committed to the idea of loyalty. We dated for 8 months before she brought up the idea of a long-term commitment. Before taking that step, I told her everything about my past with Nancy. April listened carefully, then reassured me she valued fidelity above all else. We married, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. April and I built a life together rooted in trust. When she told me she was pregnant, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and hope. Our child, due in 7 months, symbolizes a fresh start, a chance to build the family I once dreamed of but never had with Nancy. Reflecting on it all, I've learned that love without trust isn't love at all. No matter how deeply you care for someone, a relationship can't survive deception. Staying true to your values is hard, but it's the only way to find genuine happiness. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Have you faced a similar situation, or do you have advice for others navigating betrayal? Let's start a conversation. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more stories and discussions on relationships, trust, and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and take care.